Right, so we're live. We are into week three of the Q&A. Not the well, week three of the program. This is the webinar, and we're going to go through a few points from everyone's check-in. So we've got that covered off. Some of you may or may not notice I've been through this week. I won't do it every week. I've been through everyone's hub and just given you like a real super quick little bit of feedback on your measurements, just so you've got that extra like tier of reassurance. I think all in all, pretty much everyone's doing really well, um, especially given like what they've all got going on. Everyone's seeing progress or at least maintaining it when life is crazy. So that's good. I'm really happy to see that. And I think what I like is you guys can see that as well. I don't think anyone's telling me in their check-in that they can't see progress that's clearly there. So that's really good, really reassuring. So I'm going to get into it. I'll get sharing the screen. Let's share my presentation and do that. And we should be sharing. Okay. So I'll put that into present view so it looks a bit nicer. Full screen. There we go. Right, that looks a bit better. So, as I said, week three, we'll get into it. So, things that are going really well for everyone, I think, on like the broader picture, um, things that people are finding helpful, like the scales make a big difference to portions, or just having some kind of method of portion control controls calories, right? That's how it works. Then using our app then makes that a little bit more accurate. Um, the same person said like being in a budgeting mindset, so knowing they've got, X amount of calories for the week, splitting that up accordingly. And I would say as well, like the next bit is what someone else said, eating what they want, but planning better to make sure that they can eat what they want. Often, like good nutrition is always, that always tends to be a compromise. So it's like it comes back to that budgeting thing, but like pizza, cake, chocolate is like everywhere. Like that Belgian bun that someone's given me in the photo there, like it's everywhere and very accessible and very tasty. Like we can have it, but we can't have it all the time, essentially. And having that budgeting mindset helps. Also telling ourselves we can have some of that. I think a lot of people maybe not a lot, a few people in the first week struggle a little bit with that and wanting to be perfect with like the food choices. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to be good enough. So I'm really pleased people are seeing that. Like on the flip side, there's definitely one of us. I know, like Claire tends to just do everything on a Saturday because she is absolutely slammed. But she's getting it done, right? And I think she's surviving, and that's also a win. Like, can't forget that. And I think a lot of people in the group kind of supported that as well, and sort of told her that that's okay, which is fantastic, and it is. I think if we end up in a period where we've got a week's gone to absolute chaos, we could just say, yeah, if I've eaten a couple of pieces of fruit every day, got hydrated, and kept an eye on my calories without even like, I'm not even say to hit them. I think I said it to Claire and when I gave her some feedback, like literally 90% of the population aren't doing that. So, it doesn't sound like a lot when we're a little bit more dialed in and we know what we're doing, but actually it really is. So, and it will make a difference, even if that difference comes later down the line when we get like a little bit busier, or a little bit less busy, sorry. Things that people potentially like are looking to refine. Got a question around like, I think Mark's finding it particularly hard after his training. Mark's trained strongman, so it is very taxing. I've done that myself, and it hits differently, as my colleague would say. Um, what I would say, if you're like exercise does make you hungrier, I've included for the exercise that you all do in your calorie targets. So the first thing to try and avoid, even though your Garmin might be telling you a certain amount of calorie burn during that session, uh, it's not right. So, and even if it was right, I've already accounted for that. So if we were to add back in the calories that your Garmin has told you you've burnt, you're actually doubling up on that. You're sort of double accounting, which we want to avoid, and that's quite often where people stall because they actually track it within a calorie deficit or the right amount of calories. They look at their smartwatch, it tells them they burn 450 calories in a session. I've already accounted for that in your activity, so you're just putting back that and bringing yourself to a level. So we're going to want to try and avoid that. The things I would look around if we're really, really hungry, I think generally in most situations, but especially in around training, have a little think about how well you are fueled going into that session. So I don't, if this is a problem, don't bank too many calories for the back end of the day. Make sure you eat a proper lunch and a proper breakfast. The other thing we could play with is have a snack before training, and then play with having a snack after training and see if either of those helps. I think in like Mark's case, I think he'll be able to do this probably quite routinely. What can really help is if we so say after training, we've got a little gap between training and making dinner. And I think I hear from loads of parents, they're making dinner, probably that's the point that they relax. The kids are probably still going a bit nuts. Like, and it's quite easy to graze while we're making dinner because like we've relaxed a little bit, there's food available and then we've realized we're hungry. So potentially what might work really well after training is to get in a protein shake and a piece of fruit. Sounds really simple. It's only going to yield like 200 to 250 calories. It's going to rehydrate us. It's a good habit to get in to put some protein back in, and it's hopefully going to blunt our appetite for long enough to stop us from grazing. I think when people tend to graze around dinner, I try and get them to eat something beforehand because they're obviously hungry. And again, that sounds simple, but like if we can pick something dead simple like that, that could work.
I
Um,
tend to put a protein shake, like the For Goodness shakes.
oh yeah,
I really really like those. So I tend to put one in the car. Obviously, it doesn't work if we're having a heat wave, but in this
no,
weather, it's
fine. In this way, it's fine.
it
Yeah,
stays in the car. Or a packet of those little the chicken
perfect.
fridge raiders. I just leave them in the car, so when I've finished training, that at least I've got something that's not bad.
Yeah, and it just takes the edge off and gets you to the point where you can then have created dinner and sit down and get it done. Yeah, perfect, Karen. Thank you. Um, I think so. This isn't like a bit too refined, but someone was asking like measurements are changing really nicely. The weight static, that's absolutely fine. If we're seeing those measurements changing, where's it going? It's going somewhere, right? Whatever the scales say, like if we're shrinking, we're losing body fat, especially if we're hitting our protein target and training hard. That's progress. Like the scales will fall away eventually. That it's like not practically impossible that they won't. You just need to wait a little bit longer. It's probably water retention. You might be gaining a little bit of muscle mass. It's all good. Um, Another thing I want to talk about, like a few people have commented around struggling with hunger more than usual. That can like, especially for the ladies, that can fluctuate across the month with your cycle or just hormonal changes. It can fluctuate a lot with stress as well. That's for everyone. Um, something that's really like I picked up from like a female coach about how she would work with her ladies and she would give them in and around their menstrual cycle like some discretionary calories to work with and say, you know, why don't we just put our calories by a small amount, 100 to 200 calories if we're having a day where all we want to eat is chocolate because it's still we're setting ourselves a parameter. We're like coming slightly out of a calorie, like slightly out of the size of our calorie deficit. We're probably not fully out of it. And by giving ourselves permission to have a few more calories, we're scratching the itch of craving slash hunger, but within an amount of control. That can help for literally all of us. If you're having a really, really bad week and you still want to be on track with your calories, like this is not a like trade secret. You're all within a 20% calorie deficit. So, for example, if your calorie target is 2000, if you ate 2200, that right? You would get away with no 2,400. Sorry, you would be around your calorie maintenance. That's a considerable amount more food than you were eating, and you're just pressing pause on progress for that week. So I think if we are really, really struggling, that might be the crux to it. There's always going to be more hunger than usual when we're sleeping badly. So if the kids I'm not a dad and I'm sure like some of the parents chip in but I it's not something that you can control in my mind like they're going to do what they're going to do and you're going to feel hungry and aggy and shitty I kind of remember it from having a puppy but it doesn't last as long right you're going to feel like grumpy and hungrier and knowing that's why you're feeling hungry can help but it doesn't necessarily fix it so then saying to yourself, well, it has been a particular, and I think maybe in some cases, like if it's been a particularly bad night, maybe say to yourself, it's okay to have a little bit more to eat today, just so I don't go like mental with it. Like you're almost sort of heading it off at the pass and saying, God, all I want is like three Jaffa cakes, or just go have them, right? It's not like if you scratch that itch sooner, it might just it might just go away. So that would be like a bit of tactical advice potentially. Like the other advice I give around it is just to make sure that if we are hungry a lot of the time, just to make sure we're not right down at the bottom end of our calorie range for a start, and to eat some more filling foods. And I'll just go a little bit into that with like some stuff I've shown other people in the past. So um, things that make a food filling. Um, the most filling foods are low in weight, high in volume, and low in calories, right? So something like a potato would be a good example of that. It's very much like it's big because it's got a lot of water in it, it's got some fiber in it, not particularly calorie dense versus like the same size visually as a portion of rice, right? Um, they tend to be higher in protein, fiber, and water. Just a caveat on potatoes, which I'm sure we all know, if you boil them if instead of boiling them, you add butter, salt, and fry them in a deep fat fryer, they become really easy to eat. Right? They become like Pringles or fries, and they're not quite as filling. But I'm sure we all kind of appreciate that. But it's always worth pointing out. Um, this is a little graphic of where it's sort of been like studied a little bit and kind of rectified. But I quite like it because you see like most satisfying or filling food. So I've got like filling versus hungry foods in this graphic, right? So potatoes, porridge, apples, beef, fruit, cheese is quite filling but high in calorie. Um, Lentils because of the fiber content, and actually we are very low in calorie for what they are and the source of protein. Right. Some of these are more obvious than others, like sugar puffs, like really easy to overeat. Biscuits, we know that. Bananas aren't as filling. Some people find them more filling, but like they're quite sweet and tasty, and you can eat. I think if you had like a massive punnet of strawberries versus a couple of bananas, you'd probably find the strawberries harder to eat, most people, because there's got more water in them, and there's certainly less calories in them for the same volume. Cornflakes aren't very filling. Special K, although it's marketed as like health food, there's nothing wrong with these things, by the way, guys. They just don't tend to be as filling. Crisps, peanuts, obviously like donuts, croissants, really tasty, high in calorie, not as filling. So this gives us an idea of like if we're eating more stuff in this and less stuff in this, that might be somewhere to like address the balance a tiny bit. Um, so just real quick advice on that, which takes me on to like the stuff that people have asked. Before I go into this, actually, as we've got one, two, three, four, five, six of you on, does anybody want to ask something or ask the question that they've already asked in the check-in? Can be anything. Well, we've got you live, so it's interactive. Doesn't matter if you're happy. No, all good. Okay.
I had a
Oh, go
question
on,
for
Tim.
them.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing like a sauce, say mayonnaise,
Hmm.
I have been just weighing it and
Hmm.
kind of going with the loose 15 mils equals 15 grams ish.
Yeah, 100% do that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's
Yeah,
it.
I think anything with the fluid it is a little bit looser, but like fluid grams is or fluid milliliters is pretty much the same as fluid grams. It's like it have to be something quite odd to not be close enough to that. And it's as long as you do it consistently right, it doesn't
Yep,
matter. It's just going to be easier on your scales. I do that as well. Mine will change to milliliters, but 99% of stuff I put on them says the same number when you flick it over to grams. So I
I
think
don't have a snazzy one like
no, if I'm not sure it's there much point in it to be honest.
that. Thanks.
Um, Um, yeah, perfect. Right. So, question around. So this sort of goes back to like the training bit. Like, if we are, so do the thing. If we're feeling hungry around training, do the thing that makes you fit, like that I talked about earlier, where we've got like a little snack either before or after. See if either of those works a bit better. Um, I've got no problem with people having a little bit more to eat on their training day. I just wouldn't take that to an extreme. So I'd have no more than 10 to 20% extra calories on a training day versus a rest day, for example. Um, you don't want the gap to be too big because on your rest day, you're recovering. And arguably, in my view, think I would say normally I would keep it the same unless it's not working on every single day because it's simpler to execute as the number one thing. And arguably, we probably need more or as many, if not more, calories on our rest day because that's when actually we adapt to that training and recover. However, it's got to be sustainable. So if training's making us massively hungry, it's worth experimenting with eating a little bit more on your training day. And if that little bit more comes primarily from carbs, that is going to be scientifically better because we like your body uses those carbs for the types of exercise pretty much all of us are doing. So that would be the way to bump them up. Um, I guess the only other thing with training is like sometimes it's like there's a psychology to it, right? Where we have like a really hard session and we like, I wouldn't say like deserve to eat, but like we feel we've like slammed ourselves and like it's like, yeah, I have like it's sort of like a little bit of a hedonistic reward thing that's subconsciously. So it might just be a little bit of that going on. And that's not a bad thing, guy. Like, it's not like a criticism. It's just like it might be a little bit of that going on, and maybe just telling yourself it could be that might also help you like mindset wise around it. It might not. We might just need to eat a little bit more food, and that's okay. Um, Balanced meals and snacks. Michelle, was your question around this one? I think you were talking about feeling wanting to balance them a little bit more because you're feeling,
I think so. I can't
yeah.
really remember from Friday already, but
It's fine. I think you're talking about like relying a little bit more too much on like 'cause you're busy, bit more convenience food. But actually, Michelle was saying to me before she came on, you've been to Costco, haven't you? And you've got like some pre-prepared bits in bulk
yeah,
just to sort of subcontract your meal preparation to someone who's done it for you, which is a good shout, I think.
I think yeah, I actually when somebody you posted the ideas for snacks or what people had posted for their ideas for snacks, I realized that my snacks aren't filling. They're just snacks I want to have in the day.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
make them fit to my calories, and then
Yeah.
I
Fine.
realized no, I need to make them filling because otherwise I'm just going to be hungry till dinner.
Yeah. But yeah. Okay. All right. That makes sense now. And I think like there is definitely room for that. Like sometimes it can just be a fun snack. But then if the impact of that is like you're always hungry, then maybe we need less fun snacks and more fruit for a little bit just to redress the balance, which is like a really good learning point, I think. Um, Someone else asked like I think this question is purely just out of interest of like a target weight of where they want to get to. I always give the answer because I really like it. You're either as lean as you want to be or you're not within reason, right? Target weight's a really tricky one. So like BMI has its pros and cons, and I think it's very easy for doctors and things to use it. And it's like one point of reference, and it's like a it's if your BMI is really high, it's a reason to look further. And then you can sometimes figure out that it's okay for it to be that high because you're really muscular or like a different body proportion, right? But what the NHS have added alongside that recently is a target waist measurement, which is a really clear indicator of health. So if we were to take our height in centimeters, divide it by two, if that measurement around our belly button is underneath that, we're in a really good place from a health perspective. That doesn't necessarily mean at that point we're really, really happy with how we look, but we have crossed off a massive health tick, which is a really nice point to aim for. Guys are going to carry much more around their tummy than the ladies are. So getting that down is a really good thing, like stereotypical sort of beer belly or like middle-aged spread or whatever that is. Like getting that down is a really good thing. So that might be the first place to aim for, and then kind of go from there. See how you feel at that. If you feel like you want to be a little bit leaner, then that's fine. Maybe just allow that to trim down a little bit more. So there's not a concrete answer there, but I think quite a few of my clients in the past have found that quite helpful because I think if we go chasing the scales, I think we get into a bit of tricky territory because we can get in our head about that number and realistically, I bet none of you could tell you how much I weigh. Tell me how much I weigh. Right? It's like literally no one knows, and it's not that valuable a number, but how we look is kind of what a lot of us are chasing on. It's called look like you train, isn't it? But like how we look, how we feel in our own skin is way more important. So I think that would be where I would aim for. Okay. Um, Somebody else, like someone's struggling a little bit with their water intake. It is a tricky one, especially if we get busy. One of the best things I picked up from one of my clients, actually, she was like NHS physio, and she was like, I end up imagine like what that job's like, sort of working all around the different wards and stuff. You're never like in the same place. They don't really have a base, where they probably have a little tea room. But she was like, I've got 7 water bottles that I just leave everywhere. So at some point I will walk past one and I'll pick it up. I'd say like if I was working from home a lot more, right, I've got 1 glass of squash on the desk. I might have like a couple of water bottles like right under my monitor, right by my keyboard. You know, if I'm in my car driving a lot, I'll have a bottle right in the center console. Like, I know, like, obviously, if you drink loads and loads of water, you need to wee a lot. But if we're at home or in the office and stuff, just like visibility is going to make it harder to say no. It's like you probably can't quite see as a different thing. I've got like resistance bands hanging off my door. So when I work from home and I've got a dodgy shoulder, it's just my reminder every time I walk out that door, I have to move the bands to get past the door. And it's like, have you done your rehab today? No, you've moved the bands 7 times. Get on and do it. It's just like that visual reminder of doing it is probably like one of the best tips I could give you. Some people say like set an alarm on your phone, but we know what's going to happen there, guys. We're just going to pause it and snooze it and, ignore it. So I think just get it front and center as much as possible, I think would be my advice on that. I don't know if anyone else has got stuff that works better for
Oh,
them.
I filled it up this morning and it's still full. So yeah, that's a
Yeah,
bad.
okay.
That,
And like I do it too. Like I get busy at work, like coaching and stuff, and then I do a training session. I was like, why does my training session feel a bit crap today? It's like, well, you've had like 2 coffees and half a sip of your liter water bottle today. Like we all do it. It's just noticing it and just trying to make small changes, I guess. And also, I guess the other thing with fluid intake, I've got squash in here because it tastes better than water. Like it's low calorie squash. I prefer that a bit. I don't have it all the time. I have it quite a lot. Teas, coffees all count to your water intake, especially like anything that isn't a shot of espresso or a shot of neat alcohol because it's just got so little water in it. Anything counts towards your intake. So I guess what's the book like the book Atomic Habits talks about make it easy, make it visible, make it hard to say no to. Like those are like a bunch of things. So hard to say no to, it tastes good, make it easy and visible, it's right in front of you. Like I think those are the things that are gonna help with that habit.
I was just gonna quickly say that my hack, I guess, but this is because particularly really only like cold water, fresh from the fridge, is I've got literally 2 water bottles, and so when I put that one, I fill this one up, put back in, and I've got my other
Perfect.
one ready, and but I luckily actually like the taste of water, so some people don't. I don't know.
That's a good point though. I like it ice cold. I don't prefer I would drink it like tepid, but it's so much I've always preferred it really, really cold. So that's another way to make it taste better, I think. Right. A couple of people have talked about they've got bits coming up at the weekend. This sort of everyone's like got so much more aware about this, which is great. Um, a few people like talk about maybe not necessarily struggling to make room for the weekends in your budget, but kind of trying to make it fit a little bit better, making that process easier. One little tip around this is I would say if you know you've got some stuff coming up, like let's say on a Tuesday or a Sunday, I'll say that because the person mentioned that on their question, right? We could have a guess at what we're going to eat those days and track it now, and then make everything else in this week like come back to the weekly average, right? The other way, if it's a more routine thing than that, and it's always the weekend, I picked this tip up off of James Smith, who's not always that like not a lot of PTs like him, and then but he like it's a very good tip I think of he would get his clients to start their average calories for the 7 days on a Friday. So let's say Friday we have 3,000 calories, Saturday we have 3,000 calories, Sunday we have 2,500. Then see what's left for the next 5 days. Realize that's not a lot and then maybe refine that next weekend. But it kind of gives you a bit of visibility, shows you what the weekend's like, and then you can start to make decisions about whether it's worth refining that, whether you need to refine that. It might not suit everyone. Other people might get on fine with it, but it's a really simple thing from like shifting the start of the week from a Monday calories wise to a Friday. And if we're really struggling with the weekend, that can then help with the budgeting in the bigger picture. If you do that, I don't want you to be eating like 200 calories come Friday because you've run out. That's failure, but it's a point of learning, definitely, that we can't keep doing that because it's going to be very unsustainable. But it might just be the thing that just helps that. Even if we don't do it every week, might just be if we've got a big weekend coming up, maybe I'll take the average calories from Friday for a little bit, just to help me kind of plan that out a little bit better. Someone asked about store covered snacks, so like healthy snacks that are sort of long lasting. Things that I have, I might post this one up in the group and see if people want to share a few with like because someone's asking about breakfast as well. Um, Air popped popcorn or just like popcorn in multi-pack bags, so only like 80 calories, full of fiber. Um, get a look, fill a bowl out so it looks filling. That's not a bad one, I think, as a nice easy snack that's not going to go off very quickly. I like Nature Valley bars. They're like kind of like 200 calories, sort of oaty things. They're like notorious for just leaving crumbs everywhere, but they're not unfilling for the amount of calories that are in them. Little bit of sweetness, but not too sweet. Um, and I would say if people like it, something like a biltong or a beef jerky, the long, not the wet ones that have to be in the fridge, but like the ones that are packaged up and dried. Not everyone's cup of tea, but a nice high protein snack for low calories. Those would be probably my go-to ones that I use. So I'll stick with those. I don't know if anyone else got any other ones that spring to mind on the call, but I'll post it up in the group anyway if people don't.
I did actually want to ask your opinion on things like, so I found these in Costco. It's like my protein brownies, and there's like
Okay.
23 grams of protein in it. Very filling, by the way, if you are happy with that being a snack. But I don't know how much like processed stuff is in there, or if you think about like, don't know.
Yeah, people are very like it's a hot topic, processed foods, but everything's processed that we eat. It's the degree of it, and if we're eating our fruits and vegetables as well, we're relatively balanced the rest of the time. It's like it's no like it's like a cookie, it's like a cookie with some protein in it. You could have like a cookie at the biscuit barrel and a protein shake, which would do the same thing. It's packaged up in a form like it's fine if it works. It's cool. Like processed food, like processed food can be easy to overeat and high in calories, can contain a little bit of extra salt, but like there's a lot of research saying it's bad for your health, but people who rely incredibly heavily on processed food don't have great health outcomes for other reasons that aren't to do with the food. So I think don't be worried about processed foods. There's no clear, like they talk about in a lot of scientific research, being a mechanism, what makes it bad. No one can tell you what makes it bad. But if you look outside of the data, people tend to be working double jobs, don't have great access to healthcare, exercise, good quality foods, fruits and vegetables. Like that's not good for your health. And that's like what seems to be the problem. But no one can say, that ingredient does X or that processing technique does Y. Because if you think about like, just like to go off on a slight tangent, like if you were to make a chocolate brownie in your kitchen, what are they doing differently in the factory? The answer is nothing. They're just doing it on scale. Like, so how is it any different? Like, it's not basically. Um, I think so. Don't worry about it.
Okay,
Is
cool.
the key.
Okay.
Right.
Because they were working for me, so that's good.
Good.
But I am finding, and I know some of it seems to be really, really good, but it feels like everybody has jumped on the protein bandwagon and
Yeah.
they are putting
Oh yeah.
protein
Yeah.
I say that because it may not necessarily be protein as we know it in everything. I found protein sourdough, it's protein this,
Mhm.
protein that, and obviously chicken and eggs and all
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
will um will always be good. And there are some places that seem to be doing protein meals that do feel like they are properly
Yeah.
pulled together, but it just feels like everybody's jumped on the protein bandwagon because that's what they think everybody needs now. And yet, whilst we do need it,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that there are some that it's a little bit questionable.
It will be fiber next. That would be the next trend. And like I think in the 90s or probably 80s to 90s, it was low fat. It's like sick. Yeah,
Yeah.
the problem with the food labeling is I think something like 5 grams per 100 grams quality counts as high protein. which if you think in a chicken breast, there's almost 40 grams of protein and 100 grams of chicken breast when it's raw. Like, it's a big, but so they're not doing anything wrong, but it's just marketing, right? And that's
Right.
where, like, Michelle made a good point. She knows in her protein, she's like picked out the protein boundary, but she looked at the packet and gone, yeah, it's 20 grams of protein in that. That's decent for what it is. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's so unfortunately, we just got to be a bit savvy with those kind of things.
Yeah.
Okay. Portion size and measuring. I'm going to do. I've filmed a little video in the kitchen in my. I did do some work earlier, showing you how I would measure out stuff ingredients wise and just the differences between the types of ingredients when you measure them out. So I'm going to post that up in the group because I didn't have a hope of trying to switch cameras and do this live, so I've just done it offline and I'll post it later. So last question then. I'm going to go. Someone asked me like, what? That's quite an interesting question. I think it's worth answering. What factors do I take into account when I'm setting your calorie targets? So there is a formula. Um, it's based on your height, your age, and your weight. Age isn't as relevant as height and weight. So the bigger we are, the more calories we need, regardless of whether that comes from being tall or being overweight. Um, so bigger people need more food to stay the same size. There's then a multiplier of how active you are. If you're, if you were to sit in bed all day, multiplier would be quite low. If you're as active as me as a personal trainer and a gym instructor, that the multiplier is quite high, as you will see when I share some of my calories tracking with you guys. Um, so those are the factors like mathematically, but the biggest thing I'm looking at is from your assessment week, how close you are to that like estimate, because the calculation is an estimate, and I will adjust that so that it's doable for you based on my experience. And everyone was like not pretty close to what your estimates were actually, which was good. Um, so the first thing I do is adjust to it what is doable and realistic. I then look at your rates of progress, which I've actually gone through today and given you all a little bit of feedback on that separately, just in the comments of your Google Sheet. Um, I look at your rates of progress, and we're just basically doing a test and learn. So we've had a guess, an educated guess, finger in the air. You need X calories to lose um, body fat at a decent rate. And I see if that rate happens. And if that rate doesn't happen for a long period of time, maybe we need a little bit less. If that rate happens too quickly, maybe we need a little bit more. And it's like a test and learn feedback loop. The other factor with, I think I talked about it last week, when you like people's metabolism responds differently. So you might give someone, like you might have had someone in a calorie deficit for a long time, they made really good progress, like you keep seeing a normal rate. What I tend to find when people have done with dieting and then we turn their calories up to help them maintain the same size, they still keep losing weight, even though I've given them more calories and they are tracking accurately. That's because we've got more energy in the system, we train harder and we fidget around more, and we don't notice how much we fidget around. When we drop our calories down, the opposite happens. We fidget around less and we don't notice that. We're more likely to take the escalator than the stairs, or a lift than the stairs, or park closer to the shop or whatever without noticing. So the reason we do the guess and test is to accommodate for all of that, because there's no other way of doing it unless we were to put you in like a hospital lab and just monitor everything, which no one's going to be able to do, right? So that's why I do it that way. That's how it's set up. Obviously, with experience, you get better at the educated guess. I'd say I'm fairly good with that now, but we still do need to test it. And actually, quite often, it's just seeing how much we can get away with eating and still make a good rate of progress. Because if I put you on 1600 calories, but we find out you can actually lose 1 centimeter a week at 1900 calories, why aren't we eating 1900 calories? Because it's just going to be more pleasant, right? That's not, not trying to sell you a dream there, guys, but that that is, it does happen, right? Yeah. Well, it happened with you. Sarah, you put yours up by 100 this week and saw some nice progress, didn't you? Yeah, so, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I've got loud children, so I'm on mute.
No, that's right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it does happen. It does happen. Okay, does anyone else want to ask anything while we're on live? Cool. Okay. Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining at the right time, guys. We'll leave it there, and I'll see some of you later on in the week. Bye, guys. Take care.
Cheers.
You're welcome. Bye bye.